Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to A Gathering Place, brought to you by the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. And I am your hostess today, Marilyn Hemingway. And we're so excited to have with us today Ron Daise, Vice President of Creative Education at Brookgreen Gardens, and also known popularly from production of Gullah Gullah Island on PBS. So if you're the generation who grew up with Gullah Gullah Island, we are in for a treat today as we talk about the Geechee literature series and two recent books by Mr. Ron Daise. We're so excited about this. Get your comments and questions ready, and we'll be right back after this opening.
Hello, I'm Marilyn Hemingway, and welcome to A Gathering Place. I said, I'm stepping back because we have young voices who want to be heard and they're moving on something.
Branding is really important to you and your business.
Even a basic type of technology, you learn it all.
And people are
Good question.
Well, we're back, everyone, and I'm so excited about today's guest. We have a lot to talk about. Make sure you drop your questions and comments in the comment section. We're looking forward to hearing from you because we have an exciting guest, Mr. Ron Daise. Ron, good to have you.
Hello, Marilyn. Thank you.
We've been seeing a lot of each other this week.
Yes, we have.
Yes. We started at the South Carolina Maritime Museum. They're working on their bake project, Afro-Carolinians Across the Water, I believe is the name of the exhibit. But our connections to the water. So we encourage everybody, you go to the South Carolina Maritime Museum on Front Street in Georgetown, South Carolina, and learn more about who we are, the Gullah Geechee and Afro-Carolinians. But we're here because of the Geechee literature series. And yes. I've got questions.
What's your question, Marilyn?
Why Geechee literature series?
Geechee literature. I named it such as because it's, at one time it would have been considered an oxymoron. Any writing in Gullah or Geechee as it was called, or Gullah Geechee as it's referred to today, were considered as bad English, broken English, substandard English in our literature courses. We were told not to speak that way, and we would not find any examples of our culture. There may have been demeaning representations. The people who speak this way as a way of saying they had low intelligence. But today, literature, I wanted to get viewers to realize that Gullah Geechee culture is a living one. And hopefully when readers read these two books that I've launched this series with and others to come, they will form a gathering place where they will discuss how some aspects of these stories relate to their present day lives. And hopefully they'll find it fulfilling.
Well, I'm glad you answered it that way, because I was thinking in terms when I hear Geechee, since you called it Geechee literature series, Gullah Geechee, it's oral. For me, it's an oral tradition. And I know I have conversations with our mutual friend, Zenobia Harper, and others within the community. How do we preserve the language? And
because
that
for many
leads to,
years,
do you write it down? How do you preserve it? Do you write it down? And literature is writing, and you read writing.
It's written.
So
there are conversations in the character with the characters in both stories that are Gullah Geechee. I've heard from others that they began to find it with difficulty. But some these that I know of, these are readers who are not of Gullah Geechee heritage, there are those who are of Gullah Geechee heritage who have said that it reminds them of just sitting in the yab, sitting with folks who speak that way because they're comfortable with their speech way, and they readily engage with one another.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for saying a gathering place, because what I named this show a gathering place because of our conversations we have under the tree or in the barbershops or the beauty salons, and we gather together, and we actually have not only family conversations, community conversations, we have intellectual conversations.
Yes.
It speaks
we
to
are intellectual people.
Yes, yes,
when
we
we
are.
feel at home and comfortable, our speech will not always be ours, but they. And sometimes the THs will be pronounced with D's, and the words that begin with STR, we'll say discreet, not the street. But others around us know exactly what we mean, and they will engage either in fluent English or with whatever aspect of the Gullah Geechee speech way that they are comfortable in conversing.
I was someplace, maybe it was Beaufort. I went down to Beaufort this week for some events. And I believe, I know it came up this week. I don't know where, but the New Testament, the Gullah translation of the New Testament, and it might have been when we were together with the Maritime Museum. These things tend to run together sometimes with me, but and I think I said something along the lines of the written New Testament is the preservation of the language, but it doesn't come alive until it's spoken.
That's correct.
And
however,
go ahead.
For those who are comfortable with the reading of it, who more or less just allow their inner Geechee to come through and are not resistant to it, feel that they can readily, it brings it to life for them. I was a charter member of the Sea Island Literacy and Translation team on St. Helena Island that had begun the translation of the Bible into the Good News or the New Testament. And there were many after its publication who stated because they heard it read or because they read these words themselves, the Bible came to life in a new way for them because they could more readily understand it from the picturesque images that Gullah Geechee speech is written with.
So do you see, so I'm glad you anticipate all my questions. So obviously you're good at doing this, but do you see the Geechee literature series as a continuation of the Sea Island Committee that helped develop the Good News, the New Testament translation?
I see it as a continuation of everything that the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor Commission hoped would be established. And I served as a charter member on the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor Commission, and I also was its second chairman.
You were, so you're obviously, if you know Ron and you follow history, you've been deeply involved from day one. So I'm glad you said what you said. But what other examples happening now do you see, or the continuation, what you, I guess, imagined back then when things were starting, I would say more formally with the commission and these other committees? What other things do you see now that are just happening to continue what the originators, you and others, just through your imagination saw?
Well, the establishment of the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce that connects people about
I wasn't
culture.
thinking of that really, but thank you for that plug.
Also, the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail, because there are these different connections with all of our communities and other communities of the African diaspora. There is an interest in young teachers, or teachers, I should say, who are allowing students to celebrate their speech way, to realize that they should learn to speak English as fluently and as effectively as possible, but they are not asking students to shut out their native speech, but to realize that they can code switch, which they would do readily anyway. There are community celebrations up and down the corridor, different communities wanting to emphasize to members of their own communities as well as to those from outside the very significance of different aspects of their heritage. There are documentaries about the culture, the foodways, the spirituality, the importance of holding on to our land, and in fact, our heritage, and to realize that Gullah Geechee people help to shape our American culture and heritage, our roadways, our architecture, our foodways, and not only that, but that our ancestors were brought to this country because of their superior skills and knowledge, not solely for their labor, as history books have led many to believe, but because of their skills and knowledge, primarily in freshwater tidal rice production. And in so doing, that heritage has shaped American heritage. There are numerous, at Brookgreen Gardens, for instance, there have been numerous African American families who have wanted to include a presentation about Gullah Geechee culture in their celebration, whereas they may have not wanted to do that years ago because that was thought to be something they should shun, they should avoid. There were these others from their home communities who spoke a different way or who had these kinds of behaviors. But they're realizing now, oh, Aunt so-and-so and Grandpa so-and-so, they did that, and that is why they did it. So there is I'm glad to see a renewed boost of interest and energy in celebrating we heritage.
That's so true. And I know so many younger folks are really grabbing hold to the language, and as you saying, working with these school districts and saying, we're bilingual. And right. Some folks I know who are trilingual, who've gone to other countries and learned French, Spanish, and don't realize you're actually trilingual, and even beyond that. I mean,
or to realize the different kinds of ways that people of other heritages, the grammatical rules, for instance, let's say, I'm uncertain, if the Portuguese, if they were to say an English word that begins with a TH but they would pronounce it with the D, others would not see anything. But when Black people do it, Gullah Geechee people do it, then there's something wrong with them. They need to know how to speak this way in this, but no, there's a reason that we speak the way that we do.
That's true. That's true. And I think so I make a point, kind of the flip side of what you're saying. I think my generation, I learned to appreciate it later in age for various reasons. One, being an Air Force brat and being exposed to other cultures and coming home opened my eyes to my culture. But then on the flip side of that, I come from a family that, quote unquote, it was educated out of us. And I tell people, and I do it out of respect for the language, and I tell people, I'm not fluent because I'm not but I have an ear for it. And when you hear it more around family and friends, but I'm not fluent. I'm not one to just, speak it just off the top of my tongue because it wasn't taught naturally to me in that sense. And out of respect, I make sure, because I represent through the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce, I'm a representative of the community. And I make sure I tell people I'm not fluent because I've run into folks who kind of want me to perform.
Right.
And I tell them I'm not a performing monkey. And that's really insulting to ask someone, speak the language like we're a performance. It's not a performance. It really is who we are.
Right.
And go ahead.
Whereas you have said that you don't speak the language fluently. When you are in communities outside of the Gullah Geechee Cultural Heritage Corridor, do people generally come up and ask you or comment that there's something different about your speech? That's the way it was for me. I went to Hampton. It was Hampton Institute at the time, not Hampton University. My mother was one of the school teachers in the one-room schoolhouses on St. Helena Island. I'm the last of 9 children. We were not allowed to speak Gullah in our home. Both of my parents were graduates of Penn School, kind of finished that kind of speech way out of you. But I heard it on the bus, at church, in the community. I could speak it. If I spoke any part of it, any remnant of it at home, I was readily corrected and told I was not to speak that way. However, at Hampton, where I'm not a Geechee because I didn't speak that way. I didn't speak a certain way, but others readily told me there's something different about the way you speak. It was the intonation of my voice, which itself is a part of the Gullah Geechee speech way. And it is very highly influenced by West African languages. And when other students they would say, I would begin to get upset with something, they would recognize, as my wife did when we were dating, and she moved here from Syracuse, New York, thought that I spoke eloquently, but she said, if I got upset, the THs became Ds. There was a change in my speech way that she could understand more readily than before. And those are the differences that just that whole intonation, it's like the waterways. It ebbs and flows. It goes up and down. We can use the same words and make a declarative statement, or we can ask a question just by the emphasis, whatever word that we accent when we say those words.
I think for me, what you just described was less so for my generation and my family, but my mother's generation, she probably ran into that more so.
Right.
I remember when we came back from overseas and we were living at Shaw Air Force Base in Sumter, and we were down visiting family in Georgetown, Charleston, and we were at the marketplace in Charleston, and a
Right.
woman was selling tomatoes, and I totally did not understand what she was saying to me, but my mother understood. So I was like, "What did she just say?" And my mom, just for her, it was just much easier. She started laughing at me.
Right, because you didn't understand.
I didn't understand, but she understood.
Right.
And then when you start paying attention, I started paying attention. I do have and did have, even as a child, ways of speaking, as you say, the intonations of certain words, the sentences that I realized, okay, I was saying that. And even singing it, and years later picking up, like, you don't think about it because no one actually said you're singing Gullah. But the song Kumbaya, which I love singing, all of us love singing that song because it really is a very good song.
Yes, it is.
And to realize you're actually singing this language, and but it wasn't until later I had an appreciation of it, because when I learned it, it was just a song I learned, as you said, in the church, but no one actually said this is a Gullah spiritual.
Right.
They just said the gospel choir sang it and we all sang it, but no one actually said you're singing a Gullah spiritual. It wasn't until later that,
because you're just living your life from day to day, and it wasn't pointed out to you any type of distinction. However, that's one of the reasons that I've begun this Geechee literature series, so that people can see themselves in an everyday, or characters in an everyday setting, and hopefully realize, oh, I understand. There are parts of this heritage that I can now relate to, and it will be impactful for them as they move forward.
Well, you anticipating all my questions. Yeah, because it is. We just are. I have a cousin who started on the Gullah Sweetgrass Collection shoe design. I don't know if you're aware of that.
No.
Jocelyn Patterson. Yeah, you need to look it up. And but as she was older and started her journey in becoming a shoe designer, and I've had her on this show also, and she was explaining why she used the shoe designs that she used. And her first shoe was a sandal that she released last year, and it has a sweetgrass circle on the shoe.
Okay.
And it ties, and she said every basket starts with that circle. It doesn't matter the end shape. Each basket starts with that circle, And so she incorporated that in the shoe design, and that was her desire from day one. But to get there, as an adult, she learned to appreciate who she was. And we both agreed, and I agree with others, I don't in particular wake up every morning and go, I'm Gullah in the mirror.
Right.
As you said, we just are. But as an adult, we gained greater appreciation of who we are. This culture that was created by our ancestors, and how impactful, meaningful, evolutionary, and foundational this culture is. And she took, in her lesson, she took a year off to immerse herself in her culture, to develop that appreciation. She said, before I did anything else, I came back home and immersed myself and started learning and appreciating who I am, Gullah Geechee. Then she went to Italy to learn how to be a shoe designer, the shoemaker. Then she released her first. She's on this wonderful path and released, and I think many people are going through that. She's younger than I am. The younger generations, I too went through that to a certain extent. I came back home to start the Gullah Geechee Chamber. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think more and more of us are, if not physically coming back home, we're coming to an appreciation and recognition, if you will, of who we are. And I
Right.
think so. My question, which you I think already answered, is this one reason you also started the Geechee literature series?
It is, and I would like to just give a short reading from one of the books, my TurtleDove done drooped his wings,
Oh
a Gullah
yes.
tale of fight or a flight, and the story is about a group of low-country birds who are engaged in a spiritual battle toward creating thrust. And thrust is that which propels us to a better future built on the legacy of the past. One of those bird characters, low-country bird characters, is Ruddy Duck. And Ruddy Duck is just saying, I remember this story about my mother's mother telling me about callings. Ruddy Duck reminisced. Sometimes we be a 3-generation duck family swimming in a former rice field. Grandma Ruddy would tell me, child, some buds been born with a calling, you know. A calling? What's that? I asked her. The sounds we make when we talk to each other, is a gift, child. It'll take the spirit bird give the one it want to have them for let everybody know how to get along with one another, how to find justice, how to stay in the water, and how to stay in the air and not die. I got a gift, Grandma. Wanna know, child. Sometime other people can show 'em. Me ain't seen yours yet. It's like a third eye in the middle of some bald head. A third eye, Grandma? What you mean? That third eye makes somebody see what other bird can't see. No other bird can't know. And yet it things that other birds can, yeah. Now, who had trouble understanding what was meant? It was all about a calling, that gift, learning what it is that gives you purpose, that you were designed, that you were born to establish in your life in order to interact with others.
Yeah, and not only you understand it, because what you were saying, it was
hopefully
how you were
that's
saying
something
it
that
too.
people can relate to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we have a question. How can we order your book?
And Marilyn, your voice is going in and out. It's, the books are available on Amazon.com, and they also are available. People can go to www.etsy.com /shop/Geechee literature. And that way they can get an autographed copy.
All right, am I back? Oh.
The other book, which is the book 1 of the Geechee literature series, is We Wear the Mask: Unraveled Truths in a Pre-Gullah Community. And in that story, it's a Gullah allegory of animals, humans, and spirits whose lives craft a new narrative about racial hatred and intolerance. The setting is a cotton plantation on St. Helena Island, South Carolina. It takes place during the early 1800s. There's an enslaver family. There are families of enslaved people, and there are also animals. And the enslaved family begins to have nightmares, each of them, about these Black animals. They haunt their dreams. And there is an old narrative that is one of the characters tells at the beginning, Celia Mudsnake, but at the end of the book, that narrative is retold so that people know just what is necessary to do in order that racial hatred and intolerance that was started within our American culture so very long ago, how they can withstand it, how they can resist it, how they can journey on.
So, Ron, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right, very good. Thank you. So, y'all, we kind of had a chat about this before the show started. A little internet hiccup going there, but I'm back. I'm back. And see, he's such a professional. He knows what to do. Just roll with it. But you could go to Etsy.com, shop Geechee /shop/Geechee literature. And you can also go to Amazon.com to purchase these books. All right. And thank you for your sample reading. Do you have another one for us? You wouldn't happen to have another reading for us, would you?
Oh, I would. Also from TurtleDove, because there are these low country birds. I think that readers will find that will be able to relate if they have ever been engaged in any committee for a fraternity or sorority or a church group, or even at their office. There are all these dysfunctional characters, some who will allow only a few others to do all the work, but they want to everyone must take credit for it. Those kinds of things. Those who will feed any kind of story that's about some individual because they want their own lights to shine and not anyone else's. Or this reflects something from my own life. There was a close friend who was involved in a performance organization, and the leader, who was not of the heritage, was said to be doing all these, let's say, not nice things to people of the community. And this friend, when had to wait until the very same thing was happening to her, and my response, well, if it happened to others, why did you not think it would one day happen to you? But she would, the response would be things, well, she knows a lot of things and a lot of Ruddy Duck. Well, Ruddy Duck said, what I know is this. If you see or hear of some bird pooping on another bird and you don't say or do anything about it, soon and very soon, when you least expect it, splat! That same bird will surely poop right on you. Right now, though it's at executive section of the Low Country Birds, the executive, the Council of Birds, it's your duty to, it's your time to help set the record straight. It's your time, and it takes a gift of courage to do it. The story from We Wear the Mask Unraveled Truths in a Pre-Gullah Community that Celia Mudstake tells that she remembers, and she has heard it from Grandpa Serpent when she was a young child, was that of the farmer, the snake and the serpent. I'm not looking at it exactly, but skip that thought. The story begins once upon a time, before the word Gullah resonated with power, and before understanding prevailed that the African ancestors passed power on to their descendants. Buckras saw an owl during the day. Enslaved Africans eyed a kingfisher pass their way. Animals sensed and resolved problems and made them okay. And the enslaved were expectant that nature would have lots to say. And there are stories, what does it mean if you see an owl during the day? What if a kingfisher bird passes your way? Does anyone know what the belief for either of those occurrences is?
Well, I don't know. I think I've heard about the kingfisher, but what does it mean when you see a kingfisher? And I've never seen an owl during the day that I know of.
You've never seen an owl during the day. Looking just because I thought that was written in the book, but it means certain things. If you see a kingfisher during the day, seeing an owl during the daytime signifies either a warning of an impending danger, a message about a major transition in your life, or a calling to look into your intuitive side for answers. And if you see a kingfisher bird, that communicates that you should listen to your dreams and your visions. It symbolizes that you have overcome your fears of the unknown and are about to plunge into something new. And that was used at the beginning because the enslaved in the story are in tune with their sensibilities, and they are in tune with the environment as they survive a danger, while their enslavers are in need of recognizing this ability in order to deal with an impending danger, to find out why they've been having these nightmares of these Black animals haunting them for 3 consecutive nights.
So, that's interesting. Kingfisher. Now you have me thinking about times of me looking back when I've made major decisions in my life. Is this something that we should look for, or is it something that just happens because of our connection to nature?
Yeah. Or sometimes there are signs. Things just happen. And you realize, why is this happening? And sometimes you can look and see a connection if you know aspects of your own heritage. Sometimes just from your own religious experience, even if it's Christianity, certain things happen to let you know what to discern, how you should handle, how you should think about certain situations. There is an awareness within our culture, for instance, just of what plants to go out and forage in the woods, emotional problems. And these are things, when I was growing up on St. Helena Island and without indoor bathrooms, and then even when we, our home had an indoor bathroom, there was still a hand pump in our backyard. And below the hand pump would grow mint leaves. And while people more readily today will go to supermarkets, buy mint tea, it was known if you had indigestion or some stomach problem, you just boil those mint leaves and you would drink it, you would steep it, and that would rectify the problem for you. There's the belief of a cultural practice of what people should do to lower their high blood pressure. Do you know what that is, Marilyn?
Drink vinegar. Is that one
That's
of
not the
them?
one I'm looking for.
But
You should pull something down.
no,
You should pull something down from the trees, stuff it inside your shoe. What is it? That gray stuff on the trees.
Spanish moss.
You should pinch off some. You will hear Gullah Geechee people to this day say, I put that moss in my shoe to bring down my pressure. And they're talking about lowering their high blood pressure. And years ago, when sharing this story at a national conference, someone from the medical profession spoke to me afterwards and said he thought there was a lot of validity in that practice because, according to him, the chemical properties of Spanish moss are replicated in the production of hypertensive medication. So years ago, when people wore moss in their shoes at a time when they didn't wear foot coverings, stops those chemicals that enter the body through the small blood vessels at the bottom of the feet, travel to the circulatory system, and actually would work. And there are numerous other plants, herbs that can be used, crushed, boiled, steeped for poultices and salves. There are many in our community who at one time would more readily be labeled as root doctors, but who worked with roots, not necessarily to bring any type of conjure or anything bad on individuals, but knowing the importance of these particular plants and how they would be helpful.
Yes, Miss Glass Hill is actually noting something about
that's a very significant
sassafras tea. I knew about spider webs, I know about spider webs in your wounds.
Yes.
Pine tree tea. Life everlasting tea.
Yes.
Elderberry. And it's interesting with the moss putting in your shoe, the understanding that your feet are tied into all of your circulatory system, your body. It's one of the most sensitive areas to put something through your entire body, your feet. So I didn't know about the Spanish moss, so I had to remember.
Our ancestors knew this. Not that they read it anywhere, but they knew it. Many came down to their descendants in the way that they passed down their speechways in the very same way as they passed down other aspects of rice heritage. That continues to this day.
And it does.
And those are the kinds of things I think in these two books that readers will identify with.
I think they definitely will identify with them. I have more and more am I still more and more people are identifying with the connection to nature. And as I go out and about, I'm talking with more and more folks who are connecting to our ancestors.
Yes.
All right. And the way they're connecting to their ancestors by listening, remembering what their grandparents taught them, and also the connections to the different trees that were in our yards. I remember with my grandmother, we had a pecan tree, fig trees, apple trees, pear trees. We were very much in tune with what we ate and put in our bodies. And I think we're getting back to that also because it's impacting our health. And we've learned this through stories. They didn't actually tell us. I just remember saying, go grab that for me and bring it here. Bring that over, go to that tree and bring that to my child. They didn't actually tell us this is what it's doing, but they would tell it to us in stories. In stories, they would tell us while we're doing certain things. Yeah, we got some really good comments here. My father, who's 93, always talks about his grandmother. She was the community health practitioner. She treated ailments with herbs. My dad remembers having to go out to pick different plants as she told him. She was also the local midwife. Yeah, that was very common, very common. And in many ways, we got away from it. But now I think more people are going back to that because of what's happening in our environment around us, climate change, etc.
Yes.
When I was in Beaufort this week, I asked the question in our focus group, do you believe that we are the indigenous people? And they agreed. Strongly agreed. Yes, the Gullah Geechee are the indigenous people. And if you take that to the next level, the indigenous people are the ones who are going to save all of us from the worst impact of climate change. Because in many ways, we have to go back to our traditions, the traditions tied to nature, to the earth. And if you understand that, you will take care of the earth, because you have to take care of what takes care of you. And if you destroy it, then you're destroying us. Our whole bodies are the universe. So we have to take care of the universe. We have to take care of the body of the earth. And the Gullah Geechee, if you look at our traditions, our traditional practices, our connection to nature, to water, to the land, we have to reconnect to those, not only to save our community, but to save the communities around us.
Yes.
In your books, I know what you're telling us today. In your books, do you very deliberately kind of tie into that?
I think readers will see that connection, particularly in the story TurtleDove done drooped his wings, because the Council of Birds, and these are low country birds, they're forming this organization, and they have to develop a way of how this organization should be run, how they develop thrust. They would move through the air by looking back to the legacy of their past. And one of the blurbs on the comments on the back of the book, this is one written by Michelle Moore, who is author of The Cigar Factory, a novel of Charleston. She says Ron Daise has created a delightful celebration of Gullah Geechee wisdom in this allegorical tale set amid an enchanted maritime forest and its surrounding salt marsh. The members of the great council of birds are at times wry, wise, funny, forgiving, and kind, and utterly contemporary. Son Michelle, who is the Gullah professor, the Gullah language instructor at Harvard University, wrote the foreword to TurtleDove, and let me read some of his writings. TurtleDove done drooped his wings, the Gullah tale of fight or flight by Ron Daise, is a lyrical ode to our Gullah Geechee oral tradition, told with the vividness of Aesop's fables and intimacy of an old family story passed down like a precious heirloom. The keen character development and Gullah language dialogue brought to mind personal friends and relatives in place of the characters. Readers familiar with Low Country living will catch the colloquialisms and be delighted to hear many phrases that we're accustomed to hearing only in conversations amongst ourselves. Yet one does not have to be a Low Country native or speaker of our colorful dialects to immerse oneself into this moral tale. While spoken from the mouths of birds, this story gives voice to innate human dilemmas. And a blurb from We Wear the Mask, Unraveled Truths in a Pre-Gullah Community. Darren Lee Calhoun of Avery Research Center for African American History and Culture in Charleston wrote, We Wear the Mask is a skillfully written allegory that effortlessly detail is paid to the language with each character. And many of you are familiar with Joe McGill Jr., founder of the Slave Dwelling Project and the History and Culture Coordinator of Magnolia Plantation and Gardens in Charleston. He says that We Wear the Mask is storytelling at its finest, interpreting history and the cruelties of chattel slavery in a way that is compelling. So I think people will find aspects of their history, of their connections with other communities of the African diaspora, and the importance of how we live our lives day to day.
I find the connections, different communities, in many ways we find our commonalities through storytelling. And so that's basically what you're saying, is this can be relatable to everyone beyond our community, because the act of storytelling itself is what many tribes, communities have in common.
Yes, and this would be would be literature or written storytelling, which literature should make people think about their own lives. And hopefully these books will do that.
I think they will. So we're coming up on an hour. So this was fascinating. This hour went by fast. But my last question is, what are the next steps? Where do you see Geechee Literature series going? How do we encourage others, younger generations, to be involved?
Well, the Geechee Literature series, and that is it is a self-publication by my wife, Natalie Daise, and myself, of books that we have written. Ways that young members of the community can be engaged is by asking questions of the adult members of their very own families and communities. If persons act in a certain way, do a certain thing, find out why. I just recently, just this past week, one of my sisters passed. And in the gathering of information for the obituary, there were things that I and other family members had not known. And it's not at the time of a funeral or a homegoing service that you should connect with members of your own families, your own communities. You should stay connected by finding out information about them and, of course, writing it down, sharing it with other family members so that they can celebrate their heritage in significant ways.
That's so important. I'm glad you said that, because as you were saying that, this is why it's so important to have family reunions. And they don't have to necessarily be the big, full gathering of families, but anytime you connect with families, whether it's at holidays, Mother's Day, Father's Day, a family dinner, there are excellent opportunities to start recording those stories, writing them down. And if you can't write them down for whatever reason, record them. Use technology.
Yes.
This is where technology, married with our traditions and practices, are a benefit to us. You could get digital recorders from Walmart, Best Buy, other chains. Take advantage of it. If you have a smartphone, your smartphone is a recorder. It's a computer. whip it out and have a
Yes,
conversation with your
there
parents and
is,
grandparents.
and
I don't know if I'm locked up or
there are some
there
of
you go.
my Gullah Geechee presentations. Um, I relate a West African proverb: when an elder dies, it is as though a library has burned. So I ask those at family reunions, particularly, um, what library has burned, or what elder has died, and what do you wish you had asked or had documented before these individuals had transitioned? And that is one way of keeping one's own personal family heritage alive, because there are numerous people who don't even know the names of their grandparents. They most definitely don't know the names of their great grandparents, but those are the shoulders that they were born on, and they need to know in what way their lives impacted who they are today.
That's that's so true, and that is a wonderful way to end the show. But I'm going to add one example to that. I lost a dear friend of mine this year, Abe Jenkins, out of Johns Island. I don't know if you knew Abe or not.
Mhm.
Esau Jenkins was his
Oh,
grandfather.
oh yes, my condolences.
Yeah.
Hey.
And I had him join me along with two other friends on this show.
Mhm.
Uh, when I first, within the first year of me starting this show. So when we knew COVID, it was COVID. So when he passed, I repeated the show. We did an encore performance and I let his family know. And they were so appreciative because even this show, A Gathering Place, it was started to to have the change makers impacting our community come on to this show. But in a very personal, intimate, family way, it has an impact because now they have a recording of him. And it wasn't
Yes.
particularly about his story, but it was his story because it was about him in politics and he was deeply involved in the community and politics. So now they have something that they can hold on to for generations. And people can actually see his story and his life
Yes.
in action. Um, so it's so important. You're right that we
The
lose these
stories
libraries.
grow.
Yes.
Stories live. Words live. For many years, I did a different kind of writing. I reported on, gathered and documented historical information. I'm a former newspaper reporter, and there are things that I found related to culture. But in these two books, and subsequent stories that I've written, I've found in this creation of these fictional characters, these fictional stories, I'm drawing on those historical. And that's the same way that the information that people heritage heritages, they won't die. They will impact others in different ways that will be powerful and life lasting.
That's true. And I'm
Written, Amen. Cousin Marilyn Hemingway, keep encouraging us to tell, record, and or publish them, our own family histories and stories. Don't let others move into our communities and counties trying to.
and that's thank you, Cedric. That's true. That's my cousin Cedric and Ori, and that's so true. And it's not just me and what I do through this show, but it's through the books that Ron has written. There are others who are doing the work, recording our stories. So every chance we get, we have to tell our story. Because when we tell our story, we own our story. And we all know all too often others have come into our communities and taken our stories and told them, and they usually are told wrong. And then we don't benefit from them either.
Correct.
So thank you, Cedric, for that. Cedric has been on this show also. I try to feature different communities. He lives in the Sandridge community, so they were able to come on and tell those community stories. So I always welcome the communities. Reach out to me. Love to have you on the show. Bring your elders, your young folks, those, your local historians. Almost every community has a historian that is recording the community history someplace. And we need to encourage folks to do that and give them that support that they need. Ron, what else do we need? I'm going to let you wrap up the show. What else do we need to know regarding the Geechee literature series?
Well, hopefully will people not only read these stories, but they will impact them to tell new stories or to share their own stories that they may have related to as they read with others. That's the importance of literature. And this is Geechee literature.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Ron, thank you so much for joining us today. Wonderful conversation. Thank you. It really does tell the story of our community. I appreciate you coming on. Of course, the door is always open, always coming back. I was sharing. You actually did have a sale today. You did get some sale today. Yeah. So and that's another way to support y'all. We buy the books. Buy the books because that supports also. But also record your stories. This is a wonderful example. We've heard just blurbs and examples from the books of why we need to tell the story and own our story. Ron, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it. Look forward to having you back.
Thanks for having me, Marilyn.
Always enjoy it. And tell your lovely wife and family I said hello. All right, Ron, thank you. And we'll see you later.
I will.
All right. Thank you. And good night.
All right. Good night.
All right, everyone. We had Ron Daise join us from the Geechee Literature Series, gave us some wonderful stories and also explained the stories and knowing who we are. And I want to remind everyone, this continues. These conversations on a gathering place every Wednesday and Sunday at 4:00. We've had some wonderful guests on this month, and we will continue to have those guests on. Next Sunday, we have Politics Talk with Jamar Brown and Brandon Upson joining me. And we have some events coming up also. Saturday, October 15th, we're having the Gullah Geechee Environment and Energy Conference. Let me throw that up here too. Trying to get that there. There we go. The Gullah Geechee Environmental and Energy Conference is happening Saturday, October 15th in Georgetown, South Carolina, in person at the Howard Center, 1610 Hawkins Street. It's also going to be virtual. This is a hybrid event. It's also going to be virtual. And on Thursday, September 1st, is the second hybrid entrepreneur course. Well, it's a 12-week culturally based business course for smaller micro businesses in the Gullah Geechee community, taught by subject matter experts. And at the end of the course, you have a lean business plan. You have 5 additional hours with a business coach. And if appropriate, you'll be in addition to the Gullah Geechee Seafood Trail, which is launching in 2023. And then, of course, you have 1-year membership in the Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce. This is a culturally based entrepreneur course. We welcome all, but we really are supporting Gullah Geechee businesses. You can go to GullahGeecheeFoundation.org and you can register now. Or you could go to Eventbrite and look it up, a hybrid entrepreneur course. It's physically in Bucksport, South Carolina, but you can also attend virtually. It's so exciting to have Ron Daise join us today and tell the stories and share his journey on Why the Geechee Literature Series. And as always, we invite you all to come back on Wednesdays and Sundays at 4 o'clock. Thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll see you later. And great comments and questions today, folks. Let's keep that up. And please share this and go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to Gullah Geechee Chamber of Commerce and like our gathering place. Let's get our numbers up there so we can continue bringing you this show on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. Thank you, Ron Daise. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Good night.